Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you, coming at you with another Fiendsmith Azamina deck. Will it ever end? No, I kind of want to do Fiendsmith Cheerleader decks, but in the meantime, we are covering Kashira, Fiendsmith Azamina, Orcust. So this is going to be the latest Orcust build I'm trying out. So I originally wanted to make a version of this deck that had Snake Eye cards as well, and as is often the case with Fiendsmith in particular, but also Azamina, very quickly found myself running out of extra deck space. Azamina, to a lesser extent, it only eats 2 extra deck slots, but the Fiendsmith package eats 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 slots, and we're not even playing Desiree, which I did really want to do. Originally, this was going to be more of a 60 card build, but I ended up cutting it down to 40, trimming it down to what I consider to just be like the bare essentials here, right? So for our build, we are mostly focusing, like I said, on Orcust stuff, and we are using the Fiendsmith package to aid in that. Of course, the ability to go into Beatrice and start dumping your Orcust cards is quite good, but we don't even mind opening something like Harp Horror or even necessarily Orcust Nightmare if we also open Deception of the Sinful Spoils. It's not just adding an Omni-Negate to our end board that makes Azamina good in a build like this, but being able to tribute a monster from your hand or field can tribute an Orcust monster that you open with, which is, of course, going to get your play set up there. I do really like running 2 Orcust Nightmare. Shoot, I should have looked up to see who the commenter was. The first time I played Orcust and I only had 1 Nightmare in my build, there was a commenter who said you should play 2 in case you open one. Shout out to that person, because I have been playing 2 in like pretty much every build since then, and I've been enjoying it quite a bit. Again, especially in a build like this where you don't even mind opening a Orcust monster, or an Orcust monster rather, because of Deception. And really you don't mind that in general, also because of like Nightmare Mermaid. You could always just discard it off of that. That is, I guess, assuming you can get into Orcust plays anyway, which isn't terribly difficult, because really it just takes 2 monsters with different names to go into Nightmare Phoenix. So a lot of the time, especially if you open Engraver, you can just start by comboing off with Fiendsmith stuff, and you don't even necessarily need to use Beatrice to send an Orcust monster. You could, like, you know, go into something else, like an Appaloosa or Wave High King Caesar. As long as you still have 2 monsters with different names, you pivot into the Phoenix, which pivots into the Mermaid, which discards to summon the Orcust Nightmare, which then you link into Galatea. Orcust Nightmare send Harp Horror, summon Girsu, and there you go, boom, Orcust line. So that's pretty cool. Oh, you know what? I did kind of think about fitting Sky Striker in here as well, but again, there's the issue of extra deck space, where even the 1 Kagari, it's like you look at this extra deck and it's like, what would you take out? Honestly, and it's not even the most obvious choice, but I think the next card you would take out is just IP Masquerade. There's a lot of the time where you have to kind of go into SP on turn 1 anyway, because you don't have 2 non-link monsters. You usually have 2 link monsters, or a link monster and a non-link monster. So IP is kind of situational of when she can get on the end board anyway. But again, this continues to be the issue with Fiendsmith decks. You know, a lot of people talk about how Fiendsmith is such a free engine, about how it's, you know, way too powerful. It makes going first really good, and I guess I won't even disagree with the latter points. I'm not even disagreeing at all, really. But there is the consideration that decks that are playing Fiendsmith are often making sacrifices to their extra deck, which does mean if you can play out, especially, you know, when in the grind game, that you are going to be able to come out on top more easily. Now, coming out ahead on the grind game is a lot more difficult when the Fiendsmith package lets you just combo off on turn 1 and make it really hard to come back at all, right? So, of course, there's the whole, like, pros and cons to it. And again, I don't disagree that Fiendsmith is very, very strong, and that it does definitely make going first for not even, like, I was gonna say a lot of decks, but even most decks, because I would argue that most is in over 50% of decks on ladder right now are probably playing the Fiendsmith engine. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. I'd be very interested to see what the official play rate of Fiendsmith cards ends up being. But for this video, I'm going to end up showing you a bunch of turn 1 games where we'll show you how to build various turn 1 boards. I don't really have a combo guide that I follow for this deck. I just kind of freestyle. I could make one if there's enough interest in this video, if I see enough support in the comments, or if this gets like a lot of like likes or whatever, then yeah, I'll definitely consider making a combo guide if you folks want to see it. But for the time being, let's go ahead and break down this list card by card, and then we'll start getting into these games. We're on 1 Fabled Lure, 2 Droll Mockbird, 2 Maxi, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 1 Orcust Symbol Skeleton, 3 Orcust Harporer, 3 Girsu the Orcust Mech Knight, 3 Molcharmy Fuolos, 2 Fiendsmith Engraver, 2 Orcust Nightmare, 1 Kashira Fenrir, 2 Kashira Unicorn, 3 Deception, we'll get to that in a second, 3 Diabell Star, the Black Witch, 1 Fiendsmith's Tract, 1 the Hallowed Azamina, 1 Pressured Planet Wraithsoth, 1 Kashira Birth, 3 Deception of the Sinful Spoils, 2 Called by the Grave, 1 Crossout Designator, 1 Wanted Seeker of Sinful Spoils, and finally 1 Orcust Crescendo. Or Crescendo, I should say. That is going to be our main deck. For the extra, we're on 1 Fiendsmith's Lacrima, or Lacrima, I don't know, Lacrima, I don't know. 1 Azamina Ilia Sylvia, 1 Azamina Mu Recielago, 1 Beatrice Lady of the Eternal, 1 DDD Wave High King Caesar, 1 Dingirsu the Orcust of the Evening Star, 1 Nightmare Mermaid, 1 Fiendsmith's Requiem, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Galatea the Orcust Automaton, we got 1 IP Masquerena, 1 SP Little Knight, 1 Moon of the Closed Heaven, 1 Fiendsmith's Sequence, and finally 1 Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess. Whew, that is going to be our list. Let's take care of these games now. Alright, so our first opponent's going to be on Centurion. Very glad we're going to be going first this game because my opponent's playing Floodgates like deck Lockdown and Anti-Spell Fragrance, so glad to be able to get out ahead of those here. Alright, so for this hand, we ended up opening Kashira Unicorn in addition to a couple of Orcust cards. So it's pretty obvious how we could get some plays here. However, as you can see, our opponent's going to Imperm the Unicorn, which isn't bad. It actually still is a little annoying because being able to birth and revive the Unicorn is really strong. But our opponent actually has a second Imperm for the Girsu as well. So right off the bat, we're starting with both of our starters negated, and the Girsu being negated as well as the Unicorn does pose a little bit of a problem. However, as mentioned in the deck profile, as long as you have 2 monsters with different names, you can just go into the Nightmare Phoenix, and then from there we link off the Nightmare Phoenix into our Nightmare Mermaid. And we have a way of discarding this Harporer in our hand. More than that, we can also summon the Orcust Nightmare from deck as well. Going to use the Harporer to summon out the Symbol Skeleton here. Normally you'd go for Girsu, but we already started with that, so we're not going to go for it here. From there we can link off into Galatea. Now this is pretty unfortunate that we did also open the Crescendo, otherwise we'd be able to set it here. So it's kind of like opening 1 less card in hand, but you know what, it's not that big of a deal, because our opponent's going to be starting with only 4 cards once it gets around to their turn. Alright, here is one of those instances where we can actually go into IP Masquerena. I'm going to use the Orcust Nightmare to set up another Harporer for a follow-up turn. And as you can see, we're ending on the Orcust Crescendo. So we have the Omni-Negate Counter Trap of Crescendo, followed by the IP going into SP. We could also potentially go into a 4-material, or sorry, I wish, 2-material Appaloosa as well. We do have a couple of options with this style of end board. I think going into SP is generally better than trying to make an Appaloosa. Definitely don't want to do that right away because, again, we need to use the Crescendo first. Our opponent's going to lead with normal summon Centurion Primera. We're going to use the Orcust Crescendo. It's going to let us not only negate the effect, but it also banishes the card as well. Very, very powerful. And then our opponent's just going to concede there. I couldn't help but wonder if maybe some of the cards in their hand were like the deck lockdown and stuff. That is one thing that you got to be careful of when you're playing, like, you know, Floodgates, is that you are running the risk of playing less extenders or cards to help you play your, your combo line, but also you could be playing more hand traps and stuff to stop your opponent. Yeah, my opponent had double Imperm here and we were still able to play through it, but if they had even like 1 more Imperm, like a Veiler or something, or an Ash, I mean, they're probably playing that stuff anyway, but you know what I mean. If you play more hand traps, you're more likely to stop your opponent, whether you go first or second, as opposed to Floodgates, which are just going first cards. So All right, there's our first duel. We got a couple more, though, still. Let's take a look at the next one here. Okay, for this game, we're going to be up against Hero. It's a 60-card variant, but it looks like they're just playing more like hand traps and board breakers, as opposed to playing like additional engines for the most part. Now, here's a hand that looks really unassuming at a glance, right? We have VODS Azamina, but we don't have any Sinful Spoils cards to go with it. We have Cashier Unicorn, but that's not plays, by itself. And we have Fabled Lurie, which is, like, you would argue one of the, weakest cards from the Fiendsmith package to open. That said, this hand actually represents a full turn 1 end board. I'll show you how. We're going to start with the Cashier Unicorn, summon that, and then activate the effect in order to add the Birth. We can then activate Cashier Birth. Normal summon Fabled Lurie will link off the Lurie in order to link summon into Fiendsmith's Requiem. From here we can activate the Requiem effect, tributing it in order to special summon Engraver from the main deck. After that we'll link Engraver and Cashier Unicorn into Fiendsmith's Sequence. From this point I'm going to activate Fiendsmith's Sequence, shuffling back the Lurie and the Requiem to summon the Lacrima. We'll activate the effect and bring back the Engraver, not to the field, but to the hand. We can then discard Engraver in order to add Fiendsmith's Tract. Now I can activate Fiendsmith's Tract, add that Lurie I just put back, and then discard it. From here we can bring back the Fabled Lurie, and I'm going to link off Sequence, Lacrima, and Lurie in order to make a 3-material Appaloosa. At this point, we're going to activate the Lacrima effect in order to burn, and then we can use Engraver effect to revive itself. Speaking of reviving, we're then going to use Cashier Birth to bring back the Unicorn. Now we can link Engraver and Unicorn, but this time, instead of going for Sequence like we did last time, we're going to make Nightmare Phoenix. Nightmare Phoenix can, of course, pivot into the Nightmare Mermaid. And from there we activate Nightmare Mermaid's effect. We're going to discard the VODS Azamina, which we don't have a Sinful Spoils card anyway. Summoning Orcust Nightmare from the deck, we can then link those into Galatea. Alright, we can use the Orcust Nightmare effect to send the Harp Horror. We'll buff our Appaloosa. It's only till the end of the turn anyway, so it doesn't really matter, but Harp Horror summons Gearsu. Now Gearsu can send the Simple Skeleton. Galatea can put back the Harp Horror in order to set Crescendo. And then now we can link the Gearsu and the Galatea into SP Little Knight. Again, ideally we'd make IP, but we have no choice but to use a Link monster. Now that Symbol Skeleton is going to bring back Galatea, so now she's on the field in order to use the Crescendo with. So, as you can see, Cashier Unicorn plus Fabled Lurie. Doesn't seem like a lot, but being able to end on your Orcust setup with the Galatea plus Crescendo, as well as SP Little Knight and a 3-material Appaloosa is a pretty impactful board. This is, if you want to be generous and count all 3 individual negates, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, between the Callby and the Ash Blossom as well. 7 disruptions going into our opponent's turn. I feel pretty good about that. Alright, unfortunately, they do lead with Heavy Storm, and in the interest of protecting Callby, I guess Cashier Birth in some situations could also be Disruption, but I don't really count it. We're just going to use Heavy Storm to protect the Callby mostly. They're going to follow up with the Hero Lives. Thankfully, we do have that Ash Blossom in hand. We're going to use that in order to negate the Hero Lives, which will stop them from pulling Stratos, I imagine. Alright, from there they're going to activate D-Force in order to add Destiny Hero Plasma, and I'm like, okay. But then, yeah, that's all they're going to end up having there. They did have 3 other cards in hand, but either they weren't sufficient to make plays, or more likely, it just wasn't enough to play through the Appaloosa and SP on top of everything else there as well. And we still had Callby as well. If they, for example, like put a Malicious or something in the graveyard, Callby on Malicious would have gone a pretty long way. So, yeah, there is that duel. But I can show you some even more insane turn 1 end boards, because we haven't seen a game that has Azamina cards just yet. Got one more replay for you. Let's finish off with that one. And this final game will be against Fiendsmith Rescue Ace. I am pretty interested in trying that deck out, although I know it's not one of the more popular decks on the channel. I know last time I posted Rescue Ace, there were some people who were not too pleased, but I don't know, that usually doesn't affect whether I post a deck or not. Anyway. So this is a little bit awkward. We have to track for the Engraver because we already have Lurie in hand, but we can still make do, of course. Oh no, we only also have Diabellstar and Harpoor in hand. Poor us, right? Yeah, I'm going to set up the Ilias Sylvia here. Since I already have Diabellstar, there's really not much of a point to going to move Rishilago first, because that would just add Wanted, and again, I already have Diabellstar anyway, so we'll just make Ilias Sylvia and be good with that. Now we can link off the Fabled Lurie in order to summon Fiendsmith's Requiem. What we can do here is I can do Engraver, put back Engraver to summon Engraver, which will then let us activate Requiem in order to summon the Engraver that we put back into deck. So that's why it doesn't like super matter. You just have to like switch up the order that we do Fiendsmith stuff here. Link our 2 Engravers into sequence. We can go sequence effect. It's a shame. This is actually a situation where I think I would have just summoned Desiree here and then linked sequence and Diabellstar into Nightmare Phoenix, but I'm actually kind of glad we didn't because I think we end on a better board here anyway. Maybe, arguably. This is going to be a situation where I go for the DV Wave Hiking Caesar. We already have the Harpoor in the graveyard, so we can just go for Girsu. Send the Orcust Nightmare, link Sequence and Girsu into Galatea. I'm not linking Diabellstar because I want to make IP Masquerade, so I want to save the Diabellstar to make that. Setting the Crescendo, we can then use Orcust Nightmare effects to bin the Symbol Skeleton. Symbol Skeleton then can bring back the Girsu, and then now I can link Girsu and Diabellstar into IP Masquerade. So there's another end board for you, another like kind of, you could argue this is also a full tournament end board. Full is a little weird with this deck. It really is just super hand dependent how you open on what all you can end on. But I mean, got a couple of summon negates, got a couple of Omni negates, one of them's even on a counter trap. We have the IP into SP, and we have an Ash Blossom to boot, so that's definitely not too shabby. Oh, and then we can even set Deception for follow-up. That's cool. Alright. They're going to start with Engraver. I will Ash Blossom this. I don't like to Ash Blossom Tract, but I will Ash Blossom an Engraver, because that'll stop them. Like, Engraver is full combo for like so many different decks that I think it's worth using your Ash Blossom on. Here they're going to use Rhoda for Airlifter. I was trying to figure out like Engraver Rhoda, and then they added Airlifter, and I was like, ah, that makes sense. But this actually works out for me because Emergency can definitely be negated by the Wave Hiking Caesar. They're going to try to chain Airlifter, but guess what? Wave Hiking Caesar isn't even once per chain. I can actually just negate both of these summon effects on the same chain link. Our opponent's going to use Alert, but that just lets them add Airlifter back to hand. I don't really care about that, so I'm not going to bother negating it with either of my Omnis here. I am looking to use Crescendo ideally sooner rather than later, but there are some situations where I'll use Sylvia first. Actually, I think I decided to use, well, we'll see. Yeah, so they're going for Turbulence. Yeah, I decided, I think, to go for the Ilias Sylvia here, just in case they had, like, a, yeah, like a Call-By or something. To be fair, if I had Crescendo, the Call-By wouldn't have stopped that, but I guess here we do get to use maximum use of our negates, each trading for a card, instead of, like, if I had Crescendoed Turbulence and then tried to use Sylvia later, and then they just Call-By'd it, right? So I think that ended up being, like, good order. And yeah, they only have 3 cards in hand. We know 2 of them, Turbulence and Airlifter. They've already normal summoned, so even if their last card did enable more plays, we still could go IP into SP, or IP into 2 Material Appaloosa if we really felt like it as well. But there we are. That's just showing off the potential power of Orcust with Azamina and Fiendsmith, one of many decks empowered by those archetypes. But that is going to go ahead and do it for this one, so thank you as always for watching. Super appreciate you. But for now, let's just move on to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Just want to give you a huge thanks for watching all the way to the very end of the video. Believe it or not, that is actually one of the best ways that you can support the channel, is by watching the videos in their entirety. But there are many ways in which you can support the channel if you are so interested. The names that you're seeing on screen here, I gotta give an extra special thanks to, because these are people who have chosen to either become a member on YouTube, which if you're interested you can do as well via the join button next to the subscribe button down there, or have signed up over on Patreon and become members there. Link to that is going to be in the description below. Without the support that is being offered by, again, all the people that you're seeing on screen right here, I would not be able to take the time to dedicate to uploading daily YouTube videos. So thank you so very much. But there are also other ways you can support as well. Again, link to the description below. If you like my deck tracker that you'll see in a lot of my videos, the Untapped Companion, you can download that for free, and if you use my affiliate link down there, then that also goes a long way towards supporting the channel. That's, again, free. So is subscribing here on YouTube. That's also free and a huge way to support. You can also check out Twitch, once again linked in the description below. Following and subscribing over there will not only support as well, but also give you notifications of when I go live if you want to catch some of the live streams. But really, no matter how you choose to support, it all adds up, and it all definitely means the world. So thank you, each and every one of you. For now, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out. But more than that, I'm hoping that you have a fantastic day.